Welcome to HitPoint. It's the show where we talk about movies, video games, TV shows, and anything else worth talking about. And boy, oh boy, do we have a whole lot to talk about today. Before we get into that, though, let me introduce you to my co-host and honorary Green Lantern, Jeremy Robbins. Jeremy, how are we doing today?
We're doing really well. It's a good day. Like you said, a lot to talk about today.
Yes, there's. We're covering DC FanDome today, so there was a lot of information that came out this weekend. But I know before we get into that, Jeremy does have a few words he'd like to say to everybody watching.
Yeah, we just want to say thank you. This past weekend's probably been one of our biggest weekends of growth, just exponentially. Got a lot of people that subscribe to the channel. Know a lot of you who might be tuning in, you may be wondering what the heck's going on, because maybe you thought this was a Madden channel based off of when you subscribed. But we do a lot more than that on the channel. We have a lot of different types of videos, Madden's just being one of the things we do. But really just want to say thank you. We want to say thank you for your support and just taking the time to watch our content. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, seriously, huge thank you for. We saw a growth of 15 subscribers this last week, which is at this point in time was what that I don't know. That was just under half of our channel size right there. So that was a very, very big growth for us. So thank you so much for that. And if you're looking for some Madden content, just pretend this is a game of Madden and it's just the weirdest one you've ever seen. But with all that being said, we are also supported through your support here, just subscribing to the channel, liking us on Facebook, but also through Patreon. If you really like what we're doing and want to throw a few bucks our way every month, head on over to patreon.com/hitpoint and subscribe there. We would really appreciate that. But you don't have to. Just sit back and enjoy what you're watching. And what you're watching today is a coverage of DC FanDome from this weekend. It is at time of recording Sunday afternoon, so the event has passed. But we're going to be talking about all the big highlights, a few lowlights as well from the event. Going into things, Jeremy, did you have any sort of thoughts or expectations about it?
I really had no expectations. I mean, DC themselves have, outside of video games, all their other medium has not been the greatest. They've got their whole TV universe that has been hit or miss depending on what show you're watching. But from a movie standpoint, they've, again, hit and miss. More so misses than hits when it came to their movies and just how people reacted to them. So going into this event, I really had no expectations. I just went in as a fan, hoping that I would come out pleasantly surprised.
Yeah. I was pretty hopeful for this event too, because I'm definitely much more a bigger DC guy than I am a Marvel guy. I enjoy the Marvel movies. I've been on record saying that before, but I am a DC guy. I mean, Superman is my favorite superhero, so I had a few expectations and hopes that unfortunately were not met. But overall, I did go into this keeping a positive note on things. And I think the interesting thing about this event is I felt like it really DC felt really refreshed, particularly on the movies front. That's not been their strong point in recent years. Well, the most recent films have been pretty good. Aquaman, Shazam, Wonder Woman were all very good movies in their own right. I didn't see the Harley Quinn movie. I heard it was really good, even though it didn't do well from a box office perspective. Didn't see Suicide Squad. Didn't have any interest in seeing Suicide Squad.
You can skip it.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. But, other than those few standouts, there's not been a lot of big DC movies that have been hugely successful. So it was really cool to go into this event and feel like DC's really... I'm a little nervous about using the term, good with the COVID break. But, it felt like the break from everything has kind of been good for DC to sort of step back and... catch its breath really with what content they were wanting to move forward with, because they've had, like you said, had some hits and misses, and I feel like they've really taken this time to really look at what worked and are now just sprinting ahead with that, because we saw a lot of really good looks at some exciting properties from DC. And I think, they've been playing catch up to Marvel for years on the movie front, but it now finally feels like they're not trying to play catch up. They're going to try to just do their own thing and not necessarily do everything that Marvel did. Like, Marvel built up to the Avengers and just continued with that for a long time. And it felt like DC was going to try to do that with Justice League, but that never quite worked out. And now they're just more playing off of their actual properties that they feel they have a lot of strength in. And that was really refreshing to see. They're not necessarily trying to, swing for the fences with Justice League. Sort of, we'll have to come back to that later on, because obviously there was a Justice League trailer that we saw. But they were actually trying to do their own thing, and that was really, really cool to see how they've been playing catch up and finally feel like they've got their footing a bit.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I would say it's just, I think COVID is the reason behind things feeling the way they did, but I think that's more so because normally announcements like this would have happened over the weekend of Comic-Con back in July. And there was no real Comic-Con this year, so it put DC in a spot, and Warner Brothers in a spot where, well, since we don't have Comic-Con, how about we just not partner up with what was going on that weekend digitally and do our own thing?
Yeah.
And by doing that, they were able to dominate one day, a full day of just content after content and trailer after trailer and news after news, and be the only thing being talked about all day, rather than having a lot of things from Marvel or other comic and fantasy type properties being discussed in the same breath in the same weekend. They dominated the Twitter, especially this just yesterday. So I think COVID, yes, is why it happened, but I think they were very smart in taking and making their own event and really marketing it ahead of time so people could get pumped up, and that allowed them then to present things in a way where it's like, oh wow, yeah, they are coming out sprinting, they are coming out with a head of steam and wanting to go as production can get back up and running. And so I think it's a very smart move on their part to do their own event, and it makes me wonder if they might try to do that in the future, even with Comic-Con existing, just to have that focused attention.
Yeah, I think coming out of, once production of everything gets back up and running, like, we're so starved for new movies and content right now. Like, I've been rewatching a lot of older stuff. I'm ready for new movies and new TV shows that are, not exactly like things were before COVID hit, but a return to new live action properties, that's just not going to happen anytime soon. So I'm ready for those new movies to come out. So seeing a lot of this stuff got me really excited about DC again. And I haven't really been this excited about DC for a while. So that's kind of what I meant about like how the COVID break's been a little bit good for them in that regard. And once again, I want to be really hesitant about saying COVID's been good for anybody. COVID has not been good for anybody. I know Warner Brothers did have to lay off a lot of people, and I know there are a lot of DC jobs that were lost because of COVID. So our hearts obviously go out to those individuals who were affected by that, who have lost their jobs, who have lost loved ones. So I don't want to make it seem like I'm speaking flippantly about that at all, and I want to make that very clear. But just more speaking from the perspective of they're everybody's having to take a break from a production standpoint, and seeing what DC's doing with this is promising, I think.
Yeah, they're making the best of a horrible situation.
Right. Yes. Thank you. Thank you for focusing what I'm trying to say. Any other thoughts on kind of the overview of the event, Jeremy?
No, I'm ready to jump into the actual stuff.
Me too. You got a topic you want to hit first, or do you want me to lead off with mine?
You just take it away.
Okay, so I'm going to start out with one of my lows for the event was there was no news on a standalone Superman movie. I'm a big Superman fan. I liked Man of Steel for what it was. It didn't feel terribly faithful to the character of Superman. So I really want another director's take on Superman. I really want a Superman movie. If they could just, I forget who directed Shazam, but if they could get the director of Shazam to just put Shazam aside for a second and just do a Superman movie, I think he'd be a great choice for it. So that was a little disappointing to not have any Superman movie news. I know, like, we could see the schedule beforehand, and we kind of figured it probably wasn't going to be there because there were no panels or any information about that. But that was still a little bit of a sting in my heart to not have any more Superman news.
Yeah, I have no opinion on that.
Yeah.
So.
Do you have any? Were there any moments or any movies or any news that you were kind of looking out for that didn't quite come to fruition? That you can empathize with me about?
Well, I mean, the thing is, since I looked at the schedule, I knew what to expect to actually be talked about.
Sure.
I mean, I would say, sure, one thing I was surprised about that wasn't discussed at all, but I mean, again, it wasn't on the schedule, was there wasn't any news about the Green Lantern show coming to HBO Max.
Yeah.
I'm a big Green Lantern fan, as you referenced to already. I mean, Green Lantern's my favorite DC superhero. As you can guess, Spider-Man, my favorite Marvel superhero. So, for me, I'm really pumped to see what they could do with the Green Lantern TV show, because, as we all know, the Ryan Reynolds movie, outside of Ryan Reynolds, was horrible. And to have a TV show that Jeff Johns is really going to be integral in excites me, and I'm just curious to see what they're going to do. So that was kind of interesting that they didn't really talk about that at all. But at the same time, they really only focused in mostly on their movie properties. They touched on some of the TV shows, but they didn't really go into a lot of detail on any of them. So, I mean, I get it. But at the same time, there's been a lot of people clamoring for something good with Green Lantern, so this would have been a prime opportunity to discuss it. But
Yeah.
I'm not part of Warner Brothers or DC, so I don't know why they didn't discuss it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I guess we shouldn't be surprised that anything that hasn't even begun production wasn't going to be talked about, because obviously, we just talked about it. COVID has put everything on a halt. I mean, even stuff that we knew was in production. Black Adam had a trailer, but it was completely animated. There was no live action footage, presumably because they haven't shot anything yet. But
Correct, they haven't.
Yeah. But they showed off kind of the concept, kind of a conceptual trailer almost, and that was neat. It wasn't enough for us to actually go and download it and show it to you right now like we normally would be. But it was cool to see that in production, and interesting that they're leading off with a villain and not a hero, because I mean, Black Adam, I believe, is normally one of Shazam's villains. He's kind of he's one of the main villains for Shazam, isn't he?
Yes, but it's Black Adam. It fits in that role of being an anti-hero.
Okay. Yeah.
So he will save people, but he's not afraid of killing people. Like, he has determined for himself what is the greater good, and if that means he has to kill someone, he will. He'll cross that line.
Sure. Sure.
I mean, the biggest thing out of that news of Black Adam, though, I'd say, was the announcement of the JSA being in that movie, being the people he's going against, and the confirming of the characters out of the JSA who will be in the movie. At least they confirmed 4 of them so far. Yeah. I forgot to look up the one I couldn't remember, but I mean, they've confirmed Atom Smasher, Dr. Fate, and Hawkman, and then one other, and I can't remember who it is.
Yeah.
But we haven't seen a Hawkman or Dr. Fate in a movie yet, and so I'll be really curious to see who do they cast for those roles, and really capturing that the JSA, and because again, we haven't seen JSA outside of TV shows, so that was big news to me, just in that aspect of outside of just showing the animation video that they did, just confirming they're going to be part of that movie and teasing the future. That Black Adam will very likely be interacting with the current iteration of superheroes as well, because he basically called out all of them in the video.
Yeah. And that does lead us, I guess, a bit to the shared universe now, because they confirmed in the multiverse panel that pretty much everything is connected. TV shows, movies. Presumably that means kind of the Arrowverse as well.
Yes, so I mean, if you guys are fans of the Arrowverse, back in their most recent crossover back in December, Ezra Miller showed up as the Flash in one of the episodes and interacted with Grant Gustin's Flash. Interesting, after yesterday, there has been news that Grant Gustin will likely have a cameo in the Flash movie to continue that. But as well, there's rumors in the Flash movie, just talking about the multiverse, of that really being the core of what creates the multiverse crossovers in the future for DC. There's talks of Michael Keaton coming back as his original Batman. Ben Affleck's supposed to be in it again as Batman. Yep. So you're going to have multiple people playing the same character, but different iterations. And they're kind of talking like now that might become maybe not the norm, but something they will definitely experiment with and do more often than they were. It was such a big deal when Ezra Miller showed up on the show, because up until that point, it was TV shows and movies are their own properties. They don't exist together. So for them to say, yeah, they're all in the same shared universe now, you may see people pop up on TV or the movies that you wouldn't have before. So that creates some excitement, because it allows each movie and property to still have their own world, but still create some interesting dynamics that wouldn't exist. And that's something that will differentiate them from Marvel. Because everything for Marvel right now all takes place within the same shared universe. There's not really been a multiverse yet, just some things with time travel.
Yeah. I mean, they had a few TV shows, but those never really crossed. I mean, there was Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. that got kind of the closest to actually really affecting the overall plot of the movies. But even the Netflix series, like Daredevil, Jessica Jones, those never really had too much, if any, impact on the mainline movies, right?
Correct. Those Netflix shows, and even Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. eventually, it was more they may have made reference to things that were going on in the main timeline of movies, showing that they took place in the same world, but they never had really interactions with anybody or with anything that was going on.
Yeah, and I guess I'm a bit of two minds about that. One, I think it's like the potential that's there is really cool. I'm almost a little worried that everything's going to be kind of become required viewing, because like I'm not a big TV guy. I like the self-contained nature of movies, where I can sit down for 2.5 hours and consume a movie, and I'm done. I have hopefully enjoyed my time watching that, and it's satisfying. And even if I didn't, it was only 2.5 hours, I'm good. If I only watch 2.5 hours of TV, I'm probably left with about 18 more hours to go before I feel really caught up on a series. Or, the nature of TV is a whole lot different than the nature of film. 2 hours of TV is probably not going to be satisfaction unless it's like a 2-episode arc type of thing, and you really don't get a whole lot of those anymore. A lot of times TV is so connected, an entire season will be about kind of one big conflict, and you have your different arcs in between those, but still you kind of have to catch the whole season to really get a story, get a full story. So that's my only kind of reservation about that, is a little worried that I'm going to have to invest a whole lot more time to understand what's going on. So hoping they can balance that well, that the TV shows can come into effect for the movies, but not so much that it's going to be like utterly exhausting to just keep up with things.
No, and I think that's where I hope they're smart enough to where the way to do this is not make the other things required viewing, but have really cool cameos and just people showing up in either the movies or TV shows. And it's not a required thing. It would just be like an extra little treat of, oh, that happened? Well, I'll go check that out, even though I might not know what's going on, just to see that little scene. But it's just something extra for people who may be watching all the things and know the other characters. But for everyone else, it may just be like, oh, that was a cool moment. But it doesn't require me to have to go dedicate a lot of time and go watch something I wouldn't watch normally.
Yeah. And that's I'm still a fairly recent convert to comics in the grand scale thing. I think I only started reading comic books when in high school, so within kind of the last 10 years, which is not super recent, but it's recent enough. Like, I didn't grow up with comic books; I had to learn to enjoy them. And the largest barrier to entry for me was seeing this vast shared universe and not knowing where to start with any of it, and feeling like I had to read everything to understand what's going on. And I've kind of gotten better, and I stick with a few characters that I follow now. But that was really hard to get into. So a movie and TV version of that could be a bit disastrous. But I'm hoping that they do well with it. They've done well with it with the Arrowverse, where they have a few kind of big events every once in a while, but for the most part, everyone kind of keeps self-contained, and you get some cameos here and there. So let's hope that they carry on that now moving forward with the whole multiverse. Let's hit a highlight. Wonder Woman 1984. That trailer is fabulous. I am very excited for that movie. I really liked Wonder Woman. The original Wonder Woman. I don't know why I was calling it that, but the Wonder Woman that came out a few years ago, I really enjoyed that a lot. So I'm here for 1984. How about you, Jeremy?
Oh, I agree. I thought it was a great trailer. I thought it shows a lot of the potential. I mean, to your point of waiting for some movies to come out, like, that's one that people have been waiting for. It would have been out already if without the delays from COVID. But it's one now to see the second trailer, see things confirmed with Cheetah, and see her progression a little bit. Like, it was a very good trailer. That trailer to get you pumped up. It had good humor, it had some good action, and it showed just enough to tease you enough to be like, okay, I want to see the rest of the story and how things progress to get to the climactic battle and what's the aftermath.
Yeah. I think the thing that I really enjoy about the Wonder Woman movies is they do not care at all about the continuing timeline of the current movies that are happening. Like, they don't care. Like, the first one had a brief framing device where Wonder Woman has the picture of her World War One, the people that she was with there. But other than that movie entirely takes place in 1918, 1917, during World War One, and they just don't care. We're gonna do our own thing. We're gonna make a great movie and have a lot of fun. And now we're jumping forward to 1984, and once again, I'm gonna guess they don't care what's going on. They want to make a great Wonder Woman movie, and by golly, I think they're gonna do it. I'm pretty pumped with that trailer. It was very colorful, not super colorful, but you can tell there's a great sense of style throughout. That they have a flair for the dramatic with that trailer. That is very exciting. And Chris Pine being back, I'm here for it.
Well, and that adds to some of the mystery, because the question is, how is he there?
Right.
And then yet he's not there in the future, in the movies that have taken place in present time. So where did he go after this movie?
Yeah, I just realized we had a trailer going that entire time that I didn't have up, so now I'm putting the trailer on. But go watch the trailer, because it's a lot of fun. Definitely worth your time to check that one out. It's a very fun movie. Any last thoughts on Wonder Woman 1984? She's swinging on the lightning, Jeremy. How awesome is that? Sorry, I got very excited again.
I mean, I saw that in the first trailer, so that wasn't a new aspect for me. It's still a really cool moment. I think only thing I'd say, I really enjoyed the original Wonder Woman. That was the one out of Man of Steel. Well, really, that was the only other one that happened beforehand, before Batman versus Superman.
Yeah.
I mean, that was because then after Batman versus Superman was when we got Wonder Woman, and so, I mean, Wonder Woman was where it was like, oh, wow, DC can actually make a good movie.
Right.
Like that, and it did very well.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, that's where I've been excited for a sequel ever since. I think the last note I'd say is I'm very intrigued by Kristen Wiig. This is not her normal cup of tea of the type of movies she's been in, but just based off what we've seen so far in the trailers, it looks like she really brings it, and I think she could potentially be the standout of the movie just from an acting perspective.
Yeah, Yeah, really excited to see where Wonder Woman 1984 goes. Um, Very excited for that. Do you let's talk about a project I'm not so excited for now. And we're not going to spend too long on this, just because we don't like talking about things that we don't enjoy too much. But Zack Snyder's Justice League. This has had a really complicated history. There's a lot that kind of went down with Justice League. If you're not familiar, Zack Snyder was originally slated to direct the Justice League movie that came out. He had to either remove himself from the project or be removed, depends on who you're hearing from. His daughter did tragically commit suicide during production, and that was at least the stated reason for his departure, which is what I would 100% believe. That is a horrific tragedy that happened to him and his family, and that would be enough to really shut anyone down. But Joss Whedon ended up taking the directorial reins on that project, and it was okay. It was received at best just kind of a, here it is. It wasn't a huge success critically or financially. Sorry, I have a gnat attacking my face right now. It wasn't a huge success in either of those regards. And for a while afterwards, people were speculating that Zack Snyder had done enough work on it that he had his own cut of the movie basically ready to go. And from that was born the Snyder Cut movement on Twitter, as it became to be known. And lo and behold, there was kind of a Snyder Cut that was there. It was probably a really rough assembly that now Zack Snyder has been given extra time and money to finish. So from one perspective, it's cool to see the original artist that was intended to be there return to his project and gets to finish it as he intended, quote unquote. I don't really think he intended to release a 4-hour movie like it's going to be eventually. But it's neat to at least see that he gets to come through and finish a project that, for one reason or another, did have to originally depart from. I don't know how I really feel about the Snyder Cut. I have generally liked Snyder's output. I know he's a very controversial figure within the film and specifically comic book world. I don't know. I'm not really sold on this one, Jeremy. I'm not really sold yet.
Well, and I think this is where we probably differ a little bit, because I was just looking it up just to confirm. The original Justice League movie was only 2 hours long.
Yeah.
So the fact that Zack Snyder, to your point, with some extra time and being able to put a lot of it in post-production while there are no reshoots, he to have a 4-hour movie, which is going to be presented in 1-hour episodes, shows there was a lot left on the cutting floor when Joss Whedon came in.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's where it's a he said game right now of what's actually true with everything that happened back when Snyder left. But I can understand his frustration of why he really promoted that there was a Snyder Cut, especially now, knowing that there is an extra 2 hours worth of content. I can understand his frustration with what was done with his original work. Because there's a lot of stuff that came out that the studio didn't like the direction that things were going, and so could have been the potential why another reason why he was why he left, because DC was really feeling the pressure from Marvel and needing to deliver something good. I heard a lot of rumors that the studio was not liking the dark direction that the film was taking. And so that's why Joss Whedon was brought in, because they saw what he did with the Avengers and thought he could duplicate it with the Justice League.
Yeah.
And that's where I would agree with what a lot of people have said. A lot of fans have said that it really felt like a disjointed movie. It felt like things were left out. Just things didn't make sense. And so I would say for myself, I am very intrigued.
Yeah.
Am I super optimistic that this is going to be an amazing movie that should have never been touched and should have been able to be what Snyder's going to put out? I'm not ready to say that.
Yeah.
Especially with it being 4 hours long, because there's no way he could have put a 4-hour movie into theaters.
Yeah.
And so it would have had to have been some kind of version cut down from what's going to be released. But I'm definitely intrigued because there's a lot of talk that there's going to be a lot more depth to Cyborg and the Flash in this movie, which they desperately needed, because that was one of my complaints coming out of the Justice League when I saw it in theaters. Was since they didn't have their own solo movies beforehand, and even Aquaman for that matter, because his movie wasn't out yet, I felt like I couldn't really relate with any of those three characters because I knew nothing about them outside of what I knew in the comics, and they weren't presented exactly the same as they are in the comics. And so to have a 4-hour movie now where maybe some of their stuff's going to get fleshed out, I'm intrigued.
Yeah. I think I'm most excited for the Cyborg stuff. Because I remember thinking when they introduced Cyborg in Justice League, just like, oh wow, this has a lot of potential to go somewhere. Like, I can't remember who the actor is that is playing him, but he does a really Ray Fisher, thank you. He does a really good job of just feeling the anguish and anger of the character, but still drawing you in with his humanity. So I'm really excited. I'm hoping that gets fleshed out more. I'm nervous because every time I hope that Snyder's gonna turn right, he generally veers left. And Snyder is not known for his hopeful characters, which is that's where I'm like, oof. That's why.
Which is true.
Yeah. Yeah, he's... Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I've found with Snyder, when it comes to any of his movies, it's a hit or miss for people. Some people love his content. Some could care less.
Yeah.
I know, even for Batman versus Superman, some people said that they really enjoyed it. Like, I had some friends who really liked it, but then others that could care less about it. I've kind of fell in the camp. I thought the theatrical version was okay, but then when the extended cut came out, I really enjoyed the extended cut.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, that's kind of been the norm, I feel, at least for me, with a lot of Snyder's movies. I end up liking his extended versions better than the original that came out in theaters.
Yeah, with Zack Snyder, you kind of just have to let him do his thing in totality, and then you're like, okay, all right, yeah, I guess that in its total sense it makes sense. But when the theatrical versions of Snyder's movies are always a lot weaker than his extended versions, that's a bit frustrating. But I mean, what are you going to do? Movie studios trying to make money, so they chop stuff down to fit in more screenings. That's just what happens. That's how movie economy works. But yeah, with Zack Snyder, the Ultimate Edition or whatever it's called of Batman vs Superman is definitely a much stronger movie. And I'm one of the few defenders of that movie. Even the theatrical version, I think is actually an all right movie. I don't think it's bad. I enjoy what it's saying. I think it's maybe using the wrong characters to say what it's saying. But for the most part, I can deal with it. And that's, once again, coming from someone who kind of likes Snyder and who likes Superman a whole lot. Okay, fine, you do your thing, Zack Snyder, and I'll watch and I will consume the content. But yeah, I don't know. I'm once again not entirely sold on Zack Snyder's cut of Justice League yet. Maybe things will turn around once it comes to HBO Max, but we shall see. Any closing thoughts on that?
No, because I think we could continue on talking about that topic for a while, and there's other things to discuss.
Yeah, there are a lot of other things to discuss. Zack Snyder, not a big fan of his take on Superman, but his vision for Batman is generally pretty good. And with that being said, let's talk about the Batman. How's that for a transition, Jeremy?
Felt a little forced.
Maybe. Yeah. Okay, something, Zack Snyder, Batman, Matt Reeves, the Batman. They showed the trailer for the Batman. which was pretty neat. That was a highlight for me.
Yeah.
I enjoyed the trailer for it. There's been a lot coming out about the movie that I'm not super stoked about. There's been a lot of like, oh, this Batman is not going to be your daddy's Batman, or it's going to be really raw. And it's like, when has there been a Batman movie in the last, I don't know, 20 years now that hasn't been the raw, gritty Batman? But once you push past that, I liked what I saw from the trailer, and the trailer is apparently only from like a quarter of the entire movie that they've shot, or like no, I'm saying that wrong. They have the whole movie to shoot. They've only shot a quarter of it, and this trailer, teaser, whatever you want to call it, is from that quarter that they've shot.
Yep.
I think that's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah,
Either way,
that's accurate.
Really cool to see Robert Pattinson in the costume finally. I mean, we've seen the screen tests and a few pictures that they've released, but it's cool to actually see him on set, properly lit, reacting to other characters in the environment. I think it really works. What do you think?
No, I mean, I agree. I really enjoyed the trailer. I'm definitely more excited about this movie than I was coming into the DC FanDome event. But one of the things that really started to sell me on the potential of the movie was the discussion with Matt Reeves before the trailer. He showed in that discussion just his passion for the subject matter and how much he cares about it. And he's addressing some things that I've heard from one person in particular that's a huge Batman fan that's owns and has read many of the comics of Batman. There's not really been a good movie yet for Batman that shows the detective side of him. And Matt Reeves actually brought that up yesterday, that's one thing he's really wanting to explore with this movie, and with the fact it's supposed to be a potential trilogy. He's really wanting to show that side of Batman that's not been shown before. That he, for one, I really liked the comment that he made about how this is a very early on Batman. Yeah. Beyond Batman Begins, and even The Dark Knight, because The Dark Knight took place not long after Batman Begins.
Yeah.
We've not had other Batman movies that shows Bruce Wayne in his early stages of learning. And that's where I'd say even transitioning from Batman Begins into Dark Knight, it felt like in The Dark Knight that Christian Bale's Batman had been Batman for a while, even though it wasn't supposed to be that much longer. And I'm intrigued by Matt Reeves stating that this is going to be a Batman that makes mistakes because he's learning. He's trying to figure out what does it actually look like to be Batman in this world of Gotham, especially with these people who are becoming villains. It reminds me a little bit of the show Gotham in that aspect, because that was all took place before Batman existing, but the villains were being developed, and that was showing the younger version of Bruce Wayne of figuring out what would it even look like to potentially be Batman in the future. And so I kind of feel like we're going to get that aspect of Batman we've probably not seen before. And even to your point of what you were saying, the trailer, it was cool to see Robert Pattinson in that suit. It looks different compared to other ones, and so it already kind of feels like it's setting itself apart. Yeah. And I'm very intrigued, probably more so than even with Batman, to see this iteration of the Riddler. The only other Riddler we've seen on film is Jim Carrey's version, but he did an excellent job with what he was being asked to do. He was a very cartoony Riddler, which fit for that style of movie. Right. But now, especially if you've played any of the Arkham games and have seen the Riddler in those, they seem to be going more that direction with this iteration of the Riddler, just from the little teases they showed in the trailer. Yeah. And so that really intrigues me, because that will make Batman have to show a lot of that detective side, because you can't face the Riddler unless you can figure out a lot of things. Yeah, definitely really interesting that they're going to be pushing more the detective aspect from it, and I think that's a great direction for it to go. Because I think too often superhero movies become just the hero punching the problem until the problem is solved. So it'll be nice to see Batman, who is
I mean, literally, his moniker is the world's greatest detective. So to actually see that aspect pushed a lot more, and have a Batman who, while Batman is physical 100%, but he's also very very, what is the word I'm looking for? My goodness. I'm wanting to say mental, but that's not giving the right connotation, I think. But he's a very
intellectual.
Thank you. My goodness. My words recently, Jeremy, have been absolutely awful. I cannot think of anyone's names. I cannot think of the right words. Intellectual. My goodness. Yes, this is going to hopefully be a much more intellectual Batman that has to think through his problems, and maybe even Bruce Wayne has to show up to solve some of his problems too, instead of just Batman punching his way out and getting in and say a fist fight with Bane in the middle of the street, in the middle of broad daylight. Not dunking on any one particular movie, in particular Christopher Nolan. But that's, Batman punching problems is the least interesting way for Batman to solve a problem. So, yes, World's Greatest Detective, please show up and detect things. All right. Now that I've stumbled through that brain word soup of a topic, let's talk about Suicide Squad, both movie and game. What do you want to talk about first, Jeremy?
I'll touch on the movie first. And I'll say that because the last Suicide Squad movie, not anything great that I really cared about. There was, Will Smith being in it was supposed to be the selling point, but beyond that, it was just not a good movie. So going into this one with James Gunn being behind it already raised the expectations because of seeing what he did with Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yes.
And there had been so many people tied to this movie that are bigger names, and you're like, what in the heck are they going to be doing in this? What character are they playing? Like, how are they even being involved? And so to come out in this panel where they just show the trailer just showing the reveals of this is the person playing this character and this character and this character, that was really cool because it felt like let's get everyone hyped up. We're not showing any footage or anything, but we're going to actually reveal who everyone is and just show you how big of a cast this movie is.
For real. This cast is freaking stacked, man. Like, it's ridiculous.
So when I saw that Nathan Fillion was in it, I was like, oh, I'm sold.
Yeah.
I was like, he's going to be hysterical. But the other side of this, which they even alluded to in the panel, is you have to hold all these characters very loosely because it is the Suicide Squad, and they're called that for a reason.
Yep.
And so a lot of these people that are in here may just be in a cameo type situation, or you might have a character that might be in there for the first good chunk of the movie, and then they're gone. And so it's intriguing because now you're trying to figure out, okay, who's going to be the people who are actually still in the movie at the end, and who's going to be dead.
Right. Yeah, you got a few safe choices, obviously.
Yes.
Yeah, that's going to be that cast. Like, I've seen, we've seen the cast list come out. I'm like, this movie's going to have to make all the money that there is to make any money with this kind of cast. So, some really interesting choices that they have in there, though. I said earlier, I'm not a fan of Suicide Squad, just kind of as a concept. James Gunn coming on and kind of coming out guns blazing with this. They showed kind of a little bit of a behind the scenes featurette, I guess, of I think it's called The Suicide Squad is the title of this one. And it's like, okay, I can kind of get behind this. So I'm cautiously optimistic about this one. I didn't care at all about it beforehand, but now seeing some of this, I'm interested. I'll wait to see what they do to check it out. But James Gunn, you got me.
Yeah, and I would say I came in actually already feeling a little pumped up because I follow James Gunn on Instagram, and he's been talking about every time someone asks about the Suicide Squad, it's the most fun he's had making a movie. Oh. And the fact that he can say that about Suicide Squad, and after he made Guardians of the Galaxy, like he said, it's the most fun he's had. It's the best cast he's ever worked with. That's where I'm like, okay, like there's got to be some truth to the fact that this has the potential to be a very awesome movie.
Yeah, for sure. It almost feels like they're really gunning for that Thor Ragnarok vibe, where you had the previous entries that people didn't appreciate it for what they were, so just let's blow it up and just take it to new places. So if it's that, if it's going on that same trajectory, I'll go there with it. I will. Once again, not a Suicide Squad guy at all. I've never read any of their stories at all. But this got my curiosity piqued, and
Yep.
I'll keep following. I'll keep following at a bit of a distance, but I'll keep following. I don't know if I'll say the same about the Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League game from the Arkham game makers, Rocksteady. This I'm less excited about as another Suicide Squad property. I don't know. What were your thoughts on that one, Jeremy?
Gosh. Let me just say this.
Yeah.
I think for video game studios, the worst thing you can do to promote your game is to bring in any actor that...
Yeah.
Like, and I won't say any actor, but any actor to use comedy to try to sell your game.
Yeah.
Like, Will Arnett is great because the fact he's the voice of Lego Batman.
Yeah.
And that's why he was involved.
Yeah, and context for this, the panel that they kind of showed stuff off with, they had Will Arnett sort of hosting, and it was mixed in terms of our reception. It was, I hate using the term cringe, but it was kind of cringy. It
was kind of cringy. It felt very forced.
Yes.
And that's where it's when you bring in someone that's known for comedy to promote your game. That's what they do. Like, you've seen it like in any kind of platform where someone is a actor and they're known for their comedic chops. When they come in to promote a game, they're gonna use their comedy, and it always becomes cringy because if they aren't a gamer themselves or aren't really into the property that they're promoting, it comes across that way. And that's how it felt with Will Arnett, was that he really had no idea what he was doing. He was just getting paid to help promote a game.
Yeah.
And so when they actually started showing stuff for the game, I was intrigued because of the concept. I'm curious what the story is. And when they started talking with the game developer, like, that intrigued me too, because they have said this does take place in the same universe as the Arkham games. It takes place after all the Arkham games, so you may see some of the characters that you've seen before, because it all takes place in Gotham still. Well, no, it takes place in Metropolis.
Yeah.
But it's all interconnected, so you may see some people that you saw in the other games and see where they are now. So I thought that was really intriguing. And I also think it's cool that it is a 1 to 4 player co-op game.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, all of that was like, oh, okay, that's a cool aspect. Once they got into actually showing the trailer and then talking about the game, as everything else surrounding it just kind of turned me off. But and the thing that didn't help it was then when they announced the release date not being until 2022. Yeah, that's when I was like, why are we talking about this game then as much as we are, when it's been, and it was being promoted all week long ever since the image came out, for it to be a game that's not going to even come out for over a year. Yeah. I'm assuming it'll be an early 2022 release date, because if it's not, then I would really question why they were talking about it now.
Yeah, you and I both had the exact same reaction, because we were watching this part together. But as soon as we saw 2022 pop up on screen, we both just kind of went, "What? Why? Why show this?"
Yeah, and even I made the comment to you when the game developer said they met up with DC and talked about all the different properties and talked about what kind of game could they make. Yeah. And this was one that intrigued them. I made the comment to you of, well, that might be somewhat true, but come on, they're totally doing this because there's a movie coming out next year. And so they're wanting to jump on the bandwagon, especially since if Suicide Squad movie is really good, that's going to get people intrigued to play a Suicide Squad game. Yeah. And so, I mean, that ties in with the release date, because that might be why it's coming out in 2022.
Right.
One, probably because COVID stuff delayed development. Because second, it probably was intended to come out around the same time as the movie, and now it's gonna get not come out probably for a few months after that.
Yeah.
Like you know, it's all tied in together that they're doing this because they're hoping the hype of the movie will lead to sales of the game.
Yeah.
Like, we're not stupid consumers here. We know how marketing works.
Oh, I'm a stupid consumer, that's for sure. I'm just not completely blind to marketing tactics as well.
Yeah, and so because like for me, I much would have rather seen a Justice League game.
Yeah.
That you could
100%.
instead of playing as the 4 Suicide Squad characters, you get to play as anybody in the Justice League, and because we have never had that, so you can't sit there and tell me that you looked at all the properties and you picked the Suicide Squad over the Justice League, especially when you're putting the Justice League in this game.
Yeah.
It just as the people you have to fight against as the Suicide Squad. So to me, that almost tells you they would have rather done a Justice League game, but the studio is like, well, we got the Suicide Squad movie coming out. Don't you think you can maybe put them into the game and have the Justice League involved in some way?
Yeah.
I just have a hard time believing them when they say they picked the Suicide Squad.
Right. I'm hoping it's kind of a deal with the devil kind of case where, okay, yeah, you can make that Justice League game, but first you have to make the Suicide Squad game. I'm hoping. I mean, and I do hope that they really did want to make a Suicide Squad game as well. I don't want to, crap all over their efforts or anything. Particularly since we've not seen any gameplay. The trailer was, completely pre-rendered, just a cinematic. So I would like to see some gameplay before really being like, okay, yeah, they're phoning this in, or oh yeah, wow, looks really good.
No, and to that point, you never really want to attack the game developers.
Oh, for sure,
because they have bosses and they may have had desires of what they wanted to do with their next DC game, and they could have been overruled by their bosses saying no, like we're not going to be able to do that. We've talked to the studio and they really want to go this route. So sorry, game developer, you have to make this game.
Yeah. And I really think that is probably the case. Yeah, because like you said, I can't imagine anyone looking at the rich tapestry of DC properties and going, you know what I want to do? Suicide Squad. That's what our whole team decided we want to do. I'm glad to see Rocksteady still working on new games, and will put something out new. I really enjoyed the Arkham games quite a bit.
Same.
I'll try this one out and see, and hold out judgment for that. But I don't know. It's just I guess the presentation of it kind of undercut the thing itself.
Yes.
I almost wish they wouldn't have said like, oh yeah, we definitely picked out the Suicide Squad, because that just doesn't feel very real to me. And maybe it could be, maybe it is, maybe they're being 100% truthful in saying that. But
potentially,
it doesn't necessarily ring true. Of all the game developers out there that we know of that have like handled this kind of stuff, I think Rocksteady's going to do them the most justice. I mean, they knocked Batman out of the park completely. So I think if anyone can tap into the Suicide Squad and deliver a really good Suicide Squad game, it's probably going to be Rocksteady. So
yep, I would agree.
guess that's my last final thoughts on that. Let's move on to kind of my last big highlight, Gotham Knights, from another Arkham game developer. This one's from Warner Brothers Montreal. Yes, it's from the team that made Arkham Origins. I'm excited for this one. One of my favorite aspects of Arkham Origins, weirdly enough, was the multiplayer mode that shipped with it. When you got to play as Batman and Robin and had to take down other players who were, like henchmen. I really liked that a lot. One of my favorite gaming moments was I was playing as Robin. The player I was playing with was Batman, obviously, and we were both just sort of hovering over some of the henchmen, and we just looked at each other. We didn't have any other way to communicate. We just looked at each other, and both at the exact same time just jumped on down and took out the henchman. And it was an incredible moment. It's like, okay, yes, this is where like a Batman multiplayer game can really shine. That mode was pretty underrated and underrepresented in terms of development time. A little bit, some of the features were not fully baked, it felt like. But to come into a game that is, could be single player, there seems to be some co-op that's going to be happening. I think I've seen some discussion that co-op is kind of confirmed, but we don't know the specific details yet. If it's going to be, just 2 players or up to 4, who knows? I'm kind of guessing up to 4 since there are 4 playable characters. I'm hoping there's up to 4. That would be a lot of fun. But I'm excited for this one. A multiplayer Batman game. Minus Batman, I guess. But you've got Robin, Nightwing, Batgirl, and Red Hood. Yeah, Red Hood, right?
Yep.
Yeah. I'm excited for where they're going to go with that. I'm really excited about the primary antagonist seems to be Talon in the Court of the Owls. That was actually my first graphic novel, was the first volume of the Batman Court of the Owls arc. And that is a fantastic arc. If you've not read any, I would go back and read that. It's from the New 52, Scott Snyder's run on Batman for the New 52. Check that out. It's very, very good. But the Court of the Owls, very excited for them to be seeing them as the antagonist finally being represented in another part of Batman media, finally, because they only existed in the comics up to this point.
Yep. No, and I would say I came in because as things are being teased for this game, they were releasing things throughout the week. I came in kind of with low expectations on the announcement because the fact that it just looked like everything was taking, all the hints pointed towards another game in Gotham. And I was like, okay, we've had 4 Batman games already. Like, we don't need another Batman game. Like, I enjoyed the Arkham series, but I don't need another Batman game. Yeah. So I came in with low expectations because I was like, man, why are we sticking in this world? So I was very surprised and very pleasantly surprised when it was announced to be Gotham Knights and to be confirmed that this does not take place in the Arkham universe. This is something on its own completely, and it's just set in a time with Bruce potentially being dead. From all appearances, it seems that way.
Yep.
And
he's
you get to play.
Dead, it.
Yeah, and you get to play as, like you said, Nightwing, Robin, Batgirl, and Red Hood. I really do hope it's a 4-player co-op. From what they showed gameplay-wise, it may only be 2-player, which would be sad.
Yeah, I suspect that's the case, but you never know.
Well, based off the fact of what they did with their multiplayer in Arkham Origins, I could see why they would go that route. Yeah. Because this very much does seem like taking that concept of the multiplayer in Arkham Origins and exploding it to its own game. Yeah. And so I could see them saying, well, that was only 2-player. We're going to stay with that so we can focus on the world building and expanding that concept rather than trying to make this into a 4-player game. Yeah. So, I mean, that's a little sad just because the fact of it'd be really cool to play with 3 other friends, but even being able to just play with one other person still is really cool. I thought one thing that was intriguing, because you brought up the Court of Owls, they did mention that they told everyone don't get hung up on the Court of Owls because they're a big part of the game, but they're not the main part of the game. Mm-hmm. So they're very integral to the game, but there's something even bigger that's right as of now being held back. And so that intrigues me because it's like, okay, well, what else is going to go on in this game then? Yeah. So definitely, if you want to compare because they only had 2 game announcements, if you want to compare this and Suicide Squad, I'm much more intrigued by Gotham Knights, which it comes out next year also. So that
and we saw some gameplay. Yeah, and
we saw some gameplay. But I'm very pumped now. I'm like, okay, I'm curious to see what the Montreal studio will do because Arkham Origins, out of all the Arkham games, was probably my least favorite. Because it wasn't made by Rocksteady, but the multiplayer side of it was intriguing. I remember playing that with friends online, like you mentioned, and so it's one of those where I'm like, okay, well, let's see what they can do when they're given the when they're given the what's the word I'm looking for?
Given the
When
reins.
when they're given the chance, when they're given the chance
sure. Yep.
to make their own big game.
The keys to the
is
castle.
More than they're giving the keys to the castle, saying, "Hey, you don't have to make a game that's in the Arkham universe. You can do whatever you want." And so to see what they're going to do with that, I'm very intrigued.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see a Batman game without Batman. I mean, still obviously the Batman family, but yeah, no. Well, I mean, there's no way Batman's dead. I mean, we all know it. Batman is not dead. You can try to tell us off the top that Batman's dead. He's clearly not.
Yes.
I mean, there's even some in-lore stuff regarding the Court of Owls specifically that would make Batman maybe not dead. Yeah. I won't get into that too much. That's a bit of a spoiler for
Don't
the
want to give
comic
up
book.
spoilers.
Yeah. But just look, you can find the Court of the Owls story in its entirety on Amazon. Just go buy it and read it because it's really, really good.
It's worth a read, for sure.
Yeah. Well, I've exhausted my topics of things that I wanted to discuss. Did you have any other thoughts that you wanted to talk about?
I mean, there wasn't any other really big news.
Yeah.
So I'll just touch on a couple things, just so that way, because I know there's a couple things we may not have mentioned. One being, they did confirm for Aquaman 2 that Ocean Master and Black Manta will be back for both of them will be back for that movie. They also talked about, I enjoyed Aquaman, and I think from your comments you enjoyed it as well.
I did.
Some people didn't care for the slapstick side of it, just the comedy. I know that some didn't. But because that's one comment they made in the panel, is that the second movie is going to be a lot more serious, and the director is actually going to touch more into his horror side of things, because that's been his background. Yeah. So it sounds like the second movie is definitely going to have it's going to be very different tonally from the first one.
That's a little disappointing, I have to say.
I'm hoping it's not too much of a difference, because I did enjoy the first one. I don't want them to just have a reaction based off what some have said and just totally change the tone. I think you need to find a balance. Yeah. And so I hope they do. So I mean, that was one thing that came out of all this, out of the Aquaman panel. And then the last thing was there was a Shazam panel, and they had to. I will say this: the Shazam panel was very funny, because I mean, I'm a big Zachary Levi fan. I first saw him in the show Chuck, one of my favorite shows ever, and I've followed him since then. And his humor, I just get his humor. But him and all the cast that popped into the panel, they basically were talking about, like, well, we can't actually say anything about the movie. We can't tell you anything. And they were really making a lot of jokes about that, how they just couldn't say anything. Yeah. But and on a side note, I don't know if you saw this, but there was a lot of stuff when Shazam came out that a lot of people thought that Sinbad was in a movie called Shazam. The comedian Sinbad.
The Berenstain Bears Mandela effect thing. Yes. Yeah, Sinbad and Shazam. Yes.
Because that was actually Kazam with Shaquille O'Neal. Yep. But Sinbad actually showed up in this panel. Yep. Yep. And that was actually really funny, because no one's for sure if he's actually going to have a role in the second Shazam movie or not. Yeah. Like, no one's, he might, but the way they left it, it's like, okay, was he just there to, like, make fun of the joke that's been going around and what everyone's been thinking, or are they actually putting him in the movie? So that'll be intriguing to see whenever that's confirmed. But they did release the title of the movie, and it's called Shazam! Fury of the Gods. Yeah. So there's a lot of intrigue there. People are already starting to speculate, is this going to be an exploration of the gods that gives Shazam his powers? Like, what does that mean? Who are the villains really going to be? Just all those different things. Especially because you mentioned it earlier, Black Adam is the main villain of Shazam. He's not going to be the villain in the second one, because that's why they're doing a Black Adam movie. But it really does make you wonder, is everything that happens in the second Shazam movie going to lead to why Black Adam shows up? Yeah. And decides to take on Shazam in another future movie.
Yeah.
I mean, I know that's one of, just to go on a little bit of a theory kick, that has been one of the theories, is that the next Justice League movie will actually be be a Black Adam as the villain movie.
Interesting.
And that would kind of, The Rock's comments and character would kind of lead to that, because he called out everybody in the Justice League. So it makes some sense to where that would be the next movie that brings everyone together, because Black Adam has all the same powers as Shazam and is on par with Superman's abilities. So to have him be the next big bad guy they all have to get together and face makes a lot of sense, and would create a pretty dynamic movie, because of the fact you've had a Black Adam movie, you've had Shazam with 2 movies, and all these other people getting their sequels. So to have everyone have to come together, especially depending on what happens with the Flash movie, because who knows who Batman will be after that, which Batman's the actual Batman after that movie. That will be intriguing, just because of, that would be one I think would be on par, where it's like, okay, it's time to bring everybody back together, and you can build that hype that was been naturally built, rather than what happened with the last Justice League movie, where there hadn't been enough hype yet to really justify having that movie where everyone was brought together.
Yeah, that is an interesting theory. I mean, it's pretty clear the setup that they're going for in Justice League was to bring on Darkseid as kind of the next big bad to fight, or at least the ultimate big bad to fight against. But like, they scrapped a whole lot after Justice League failed to perform. They really reshuffled the movies that they were going to put out. So I'm sure they'll come back around to Darkseid at some point, but I wouldn't be surprised if we see Black Adam kind of pop up along the way as a next stepping stone, kind of an Age of Ultron sort of situation, if you will, before Infinity War. But that'll be interesting to see. The whole to give my closing thoughts on the whole thing, I'm really excited about the trajectory of where DC's going right now, with a few exceptions. A few like small comments here and there. I think they've responded well to a lot of the criticism that they've received, and are instead of doubling down on bad elements, doubling down on the things that did work that people liked, while trying to jettison the stuff that maybe didn't work so well. I am disappointed to hear that Aquaman 2 will probably not be as funny as Aquaman 1. I really enjoyed the humor in Aquaman, but hopefully they'll still keep it a little light, because Jason Momoa just getting to have a lot of like fun as Aquaman was a lot of fun to watch. But yeah, overall, really excited for the trajectory of where those movies are going, where the whole universe is going, I guess. DC FanDome, it was a good time. I would say it was a very good time.
Yep. I would agree. I will say I actually had it on all day and jumped in on the things I wanted to see, so it made for a very long day. But it was worth it because of the lot of stuff that came out. I would say, coming out of DC FanDome, I'm cautiously optimistic on the direction of that DC is going and what Warner Brothers is doing. Because of the fact there has been a lot of turnover in Warner Brothers with DC, a lot of people that have been booted over the past couple of years, and new people made heads of things. So there seems to be a lot of turmoil, but from what they've presented, it seems like they might be heading in a good direction.
Yeah.
But we won't know till we actually see anything, because you could have said that about some of the things that came out in the past, and it didn't pan out. So, yeah, cautiously optimistic is the way I'd have to summarize my feelings coming out of this.
For sure. And hopefully our HitPoint fans, are feeling cautiously optimistic about how well we did today. I don't know what I'm trying to transition to, but I'm trying to wrap things up now. If you've enjoyed what you've seen, be sure to follow us on Facebook.com/The HitPoint Show. Or if you've really enjoyed what you've seen and want to kick a few bucks our way, once again, HitPoint.com, or this is the second time I've done this. Patreon.com. We do not have our own website. We probably won't have our own website for a long time. Patreon.com/HitPoint. Maybe if you kick a few bucks our way, I will stop misspeaking. Or maybe if you kick a few bucks our way, I'll actually buy a domain name that is hitpoint.com, and we'll maybe build a website. I don't really know. Jeremy, do you know how to build a website? I've done it before, but it just takes a long time to do.
No, well, we'd probably have to outsource that.
Yeah. If you want to build our website after we have people pay us, because we would want to pay you for that, get in contact with us maybe a few months down the line when we have a few more people subscribe to us. Anyways, that's all we have for this episode of HitPoint. I've been Andrew Jeffries, and I don't know words. You do your thing, Jeremy.
Gosh, and I've been Jeremy Robbins. Thank you guys so much for your support.
Yeah, thank you for watching. Please keep an eye on your health bar.